Hi, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of Coffee Retail Summit. My name is Jen Ruggalo, and I am the Specialty Coffee Association's editor. Before I introduce our first speaker this morning and share a little bit about why I am so excited to have them join us, I have a few quick housekeeping things as usual. If you missed any of yesterday's talks, we have recorded everything and we will be uploading it to YouTube and to the site. And you'll want to make sure that you are on our mailing list to be notified when these recordings are available. And if you're not subscribed already, the best way to do this is to head over to retail.sca.coffee/RSVP to sign up. Whether you're joining us live today or viewing today's presentations after the fact, coming in from another time zone, I just want to mention that this site, retail.sca.coffee, is also a resource library full of valuable content dedicated to the challenges and opportunities of coffee retail businesses. We hope that you'll take some time today or sometime in the future to check out the resources created with you in mind. I'd also like to take this moment to thank our partners. This iteration of Coffee Retail Summit, a free-to-access 2-day summit and associated resource library, was made possible with the support of our title sponsor, BWT Water & More, and our lead sponsors, Baratza and Sanremo, as well as our supporting sponsors, Frankie and Marco. Thank you so much for supporting coffee retail businesses with us. And one last thing before we dive in, we invite all of you to take part in the chat happening to the right of this window during today's sessions. Don't forget that you can ask questions there of the speakers at any point during their presentation. Please pop them in as you think of them so you don't forget them. We'll be collating these to answer during the Q&A session afterwards. Okay, now we're going to get on to our first presentation. We are starting today with the potential of sustainable economics in specialty coffee, the story of Fuglen. I am going to be joined by Einar Holthe, founder and CEO of Fuglen, a specialty coffee retailer and roaster with locations in Oslo, Norway, and Tokyo, Japan. Einar began his coffee journey, we realized this earlier, just a few moments ago, 20 years ago in 2001 with Tim Wendelboe at Stockfleths, where he worked his way into the role of CEO before starting the Fuglen we know today. Einar's tenure at Stockfleths coincided with the emergence of direct trade, and the drive for transparent trade in coffee led him to found the strategic development company Natural State. It is the combination of Einar's tenure in coffee alongside his current work in sustainability that makes us, and me in particular, so very happy to welcome him here today. Thank you so much for joining us, Einar.
And thank you for a very nice introduction, Jen. I'm very honored to be here and be allowed to share my learnings from my altogether 20 years in coffee, I guess now. 10 years in Stockfleths and 10 years with Fuglen in Oslo and Japan.
Brilliant. Well, I will leave you to it. I can't wait, and I've got my notebook ready.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be sharing my screen very quickly, and I hope this is now looking okay. Jen, are you seeing my presentation now?
Yes, it looks brilliant.
Perfect. Then we're all set to go. The story of Fuglen and how I traveled from coffee into sustainability economics. It's going to be quite a massive presentation. I'm going to speak fast and I'm going to do a lot of slides because it is kind of a complex and interesting journey. But I think the learnings that I have done working with specialty coffee and what I was a part of in the early 2000s when direct trade and transparency trade really disrupted the market has been something that I brought with me in all my other works. And that is something I'm very proud of. And I always tell this to everybody I'm talking to and advising about where this understanding of value chain and coherences in the market and the global and the local understanding comes from working with coffee. So everybody that works with coffee should be very proud and happy to work with it in how we work with it on the specialty coffee and working with kind of a sustainable and ethical approach. So this is Fuglen since 1963, Oslo, Tokyo. It began quite before me. I'm born in 82. So there's a few years of difference between there, but I'm going to talk about that and give you the quick insight. And then also I'm going to also talk about the topics of today. And it said Oslo and Tokyo on the slide. In 2009, when we started Fuglen, we had a goal to have one shop in Oslo, one in Tokyo, and one in New York. So nice to have a picture of New York as well, as we also are going to look at this with a natural state perspective and the potential of sustainable economics in specialty coffee. So to begin with the beginning, this is how I present myself when I'm giving advice to some of the biggest companies in Norway and city developments and municipalities. It is really cornered by coffee. It is Fuglen up on the left side, and it's Stockfleths down on the right side. All of this in between I will talk about after, but it's about working with a strategic approach as a market ideologue and sustainability economist in the new market. This is what we work with. And we work with this approach in several topics. If it's city development, if it's municipal business development, if it's trade organizations, anything that needs to understand its position in the new market, which is then aware. I will come back to that. But again, it began with the coffee for me. 2001, I came from the west coast of Norway, moved to Oslo, met Tim at Stockfleths Lillegrensen, the one shop we had at that time. And I was brought up in a quite kind of aware community, working with the kind of solidarity and in a kind of commune collective with my parents. And I was very concerned about the ethical sustainability of coffee and trade in general. I was very oriented towards the global kind of solidaric understanding of value creation. So when I met specialty coffee and understood the work that was kind of emerging out of fair trade and the awareness of human sustainability and ethical trade, and being disrupted by this brand new invention that with internet just a few years before, disrupting and making everything transparent. So this is what I came to and understood the dynamics of. I was supposed to be an engineer, but I really got stuck with coffee, and I stayed in this company for 10 years, working with understanding the value chains of coffee, telling the story of the farmers in the market of where we retailed it with our coffee houses. So Stockfleths Coffee and Tea since 1895, we changed a specialty coffee store into a kind of direct trade ambassador, transparency trade ambassador. Everything was about showing where things came from and creating knowledge institutions in the cityscape, which also served a good place to be for, of course, the customers, a good atmosphere, and a welcoming and service-oriented attitude, of course. But it was filled with knowledge and kind of pride in representing the value chain of coffee all the way back to these farmers that was then identified. 2001, when I started, it was called Kenya AA, it was called Special Blend, it was called Colombia Excelso, and it was called just Guatemala. We had no idea where it came from in the country. It was all kind of non-transparent structures. And this is what emerged over the 10 years of 2001 to 2011. And I think Stockfleths was a part of it. And my engagement with coffee was incredibly big. I was part of the Nordic Barista team. I became the national champion in barista art in 2007. And that's when I discovered Japan in the World Championship. And I was really all about understanding the potentials of doing something interesting and good in a new way with the coffee trade industry. So this was one of the origins, and it was very nice to be in this position because it was about collaborating in the market. So we collaborated with all the guys in the US, all the guys in Copenhagen and Sweden. It was kind of really understanding our position in the value chain and collaborating on the specialty coffee field with lots of amazing people. Soben Hansen, Tim, Stumptown, there's so many drivers of this, and we were a part of that. It was so fun and so nice to be part of that movement. So that that was my formative years, 2001 to 2011. It was also the formative years of specialty coffee. So I was very lucky to be aligned with that. So here comes Fuglen in. Fuglen was a subsidiary and company of Stockfleths. I started at Stockfleths as a barista, and then I was the daily manager of Fuglen the year after. It was kind of run as a secret Stockfleths shop. It was more free and independent, and it was really nice to be there. It became the hangout spot for all the baristas in Oslo at this time. And I ran this together with Tim, Alex, a lot of other nice people. We were also linked to the Soben Hansen system. It was really about understanding that. And we got to travel to farms. We got to see this. So this is the basic learnings and travel. And then something happened in 2005. I got a child, my daughter. And I decided to stay for coffee. And when I said that, they offered me, and Tim quit to go to make his Tim Wendelboe, his roastery in Stockfleths, and they asked me to take the position as the CEO of Stockfleths. So when I was 24, I became the CEO of Stockfleths, and I was there as a CEO for 7 years, working with both Fuglen and Stockfleths, and really working with direct trade and transparency trade in the coffee industry. At the same time, as I had a lot of fun with working with Fuglen. So in 2007, I was the Norwegian Barista Champion. I was in Japan. And in 2008, we were bought by the biggest food company in Norway Group. And I got the opportunity to take Fuglen as a kind of a private hobby project. And this is where I wanted to explore how you could expand the space, not only working with a very high quality and transparent and kind of high integrity coffee institution, but also add nightlife. I find it very interesting to have some cocktails and drinks at the evening. And also Fuglen was very special because it was unique from the 1963. So we wanted to take care of the historic value and we added a vintage shop. So we created the first multi-concept where we were working with kind of sustainability in all contents, taking care of local produce, working with ecological ingredients in the drinks, working with, of course, direct trade and transparency trade with coffee, and also working with the reuse and the kind of refurbishing and vintage furnishing in Fuglen. So it became 3 different separates. This was in 2008. And that is kind of where Fuglen is and the legacy of Fuglen. It is a brand that was developed or a company that was started in 1963, but we developed it in 2008 into something more. We added values to it. We added value chains to it. We added the furniture. We added the cocktails and the nighttime, and we added kind of the whole elements. And this was together with the 2 very good friends of mine. I was still the CEO of Stockfleths, so I was kind of managing from the side and working together with them at nighttime, and because I had my day job. And we developed this together into something that kind of became quite much richer. And it taught us a lot. So it was very interesting. And this was my approach to Oslo. So to just really get into, and this is how I stayed in Oslo and learned how the Oslo as a city works and the dynamics of Oslo. So this is where we go into Fuglen. It really was me, it was Pepe, and it was Halvor. We created this ambience, and it became the hangout place of all the baristas. We were working with all the cool roasteries at the time. Tim, Supreme Roastwork, Soben Hansen, Kaffa, all of these great participants of specialty coffee in Oslo and Norway, representing that perspective. And this really caught off. It kind of exploded with interest of Fuglen because of our, I guess it was because of our approach and our personal engagement with our different topics. The unification of Fuglen became very strong, and to understand the dynamics of that, it was quite interesting, and to understand kind of both the attractivity and the potential of communication, and this became very apparent. So this was where we formulated the idea that we wanted to go to Tokyo. This is the 2 old ladies that used to run the shop for 37 years before we took over. But it was really about being genuine and understanding, wanting to do something cool in the market and create something new. So it really got a lot of attention, and in 2011, you see Kenji there in one of the articles together with me. He came over and joined our team. I went over to look at the building that he had found, and we decided to actually make Fuglen in Tokyo. It was more like an experiment than kind of maybe a smart business approach, but it really scaled up quickly. So we had Fuglen, the original shop, and then we created Fuglen Tokyo. And this was in 2011. We started the project. We opened in 2012. And at this time, I quit in Stockfleths. But it was really interesting to see how we could engage in the Japanese market. I was very fascinated by the Japanese approach to market and the Japanese market culture, their orientation towards nature. We came from the Nordics, so we have a very strong orientation towards the society. And it's really kind of interesting to see that in dynamics. And also for the North American market culture, it's very human-centric with the kind of understanding the individual. So it's quite interesting to work with these different lenses in value creation. So we started Fuglen Tokyo. In 2014, we started Fuglen Coffee Roasters Tokyo. This is the new location in Nobelito. We had to expand. And in 2018, we opened Fuglen Asakusa. It's on the east side of Tokyo. And 2019, also 2018, beginning of 2019, we really got Fuglen Coffee Roasters in Oslo up and going. So this is our 5 venues now. It really scaled up, and it's all about kind of the downtown shop where you have the original Fuglen with the dynamics of this original building, and really taking that into consent and understanding it. And this is the team that we developed Fuglen Tokyo with, because it is really all about the people. It's me, Pepe, Halvor, and then Yazu, Yumi, and Kenji, which is still administrating the whole Japan operations. It was really about taking the feel and the atmosphere and the sphere of Fuglen and bringing it into the streetscape of Tokyo. And the same with Fuglen Asakusa, which is a very interesting location. And we really work with it's all about quality to the people, really accessibility, open doors, open windows, and really make sure that you get this amazing quality of life, quality of cup of coffee in a very accessible way. So this is the different venues and how they look. And this is also the newest shop in Gamlebyen. This is special to me because I live next door. And this is also where we come into the understanding of city development. So we'll come back to that. It's really about building these atmospheres. Fuglen is about a very holistic approach of communication, understanding the values and representing something. So it's all down to the details and the materials, the quality of the coffee, the story behind, the people that is working there and how they work in structure, and creating these accessible living spaces in the cities where people can find their homes, second to home, and they can really feel welcome. So this has been the whole quality of Fuglen in a sense. And this is very educational. And this is quite nicely summarized in this article from D2 magazine in Norway 2 years ago. It states the Fuglen Perspective. And it's really brings in how we can see the world from kind of Fuglen and what we've learned looking at the Japanese market culture with the Nordic perspective, and also looking at the Nordic market culture with the Japanese perspective, and also being allowed to work globally with coffee the coffee chain. And also we did quite an extensive mapping in New York. So we have done quite a few projects in New York, and we have not in any way put the plan of opening in New York to the end, but we simply had too much to do in Japan for the last decade. And it was really about kind of understanding the Japanese perspective of the nature and these elements that brought in the Fuglen perspective. But the perspective is quite interesting with Fuglen and coffee bars, and this is where you really understand the connectivity, right? Because it's really about the people, and all these people passing through Fuglen system, staying a year or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years like me. It's really interesting to be a part of something that's older than yourself and all of us. But it's really kind of nice to connect in that way that you do in a coffee bar. And this is where I come from. I stood on the floor myself for 5 years. And it's really, really all about understanding that it's about connecting people. And this is where the dynamics of anything happens. The market is simply people in its purest consent. It's just 8 billion people taking emotional choices on what they prefer and how they are engaged with. So it's really interesting to see how this works. This is from Oslo, but it's really important. And it's about connecting with these people, the producers. And that is kind of the core essence of the value chain of coffee. It is to understand local community to local community and all the impacts that's possible in that concept today. And that is where we really, I think that is why coffee is so educational, because it's so concrete, it's so tactile, it tastes amazing, and it's really a social beverage at the same time as it is a high quality natural product, and it travels the world. So it's really these connectivities and these coherencies is what got me engaged and understood into this factor, economy. So this is Fuglen explained in an Excel sheet. Of course, we work with numbers, right? This is me. I am an economist. Understanding all the dimensions of what we just saw in an economic perspective became what was kind of really wanted I wanted to challenge myself on that and start to try to find descriptions where you could explain something economically that has much more value than just income and asset and costs. But this is the kind of, you see Fuglen Oslo, Fuglen Tokyo, the whole diversity of sales and cost drivers, and how we kind of really work with more and more complex structures of income. Because remember, there's 3 businesses in one here. It's vintage shop, it's cocktail bar, and it's coffee bar. It's a roastery. There's all kind of these income streams. And we saw that if you actually are a bit smart about how you use your store space, how you activate daytime, you activate nighttime, you add different elements of income streams or value chains into the system, you get more complex and resilient structures in the market. And many small incomes creates bigger incomes, and you get a more safe and sustainable business. And that is the model that made me believe that we could go to Japan. Because I knew that I didn't speak a word Japanese, but I could speak economic. I could make this sheet, and I could make partners in Japan see the numbers. Economy is a numeric language, so you can really explain what you count. But then again, what do you count? So this is where we work, and this is just a small preview of what we're going to do in the second session, where we are going to broaden the perspective a little bit. It's about understanding the value chains and explaining this in an economic concept. This is what specialty coffee taught me. This is an excerpt of the value chain analysis of local society to local society that I was actually so lucky to be advising an employee, Norwegian Coffee Association, this winter on a full sustainable economic analysis of the value chains of coffee from a Norwegian perspective, together with both the industry and the specialty coffee associations. And really kind of where do we lose value and also maybe income or revenue, but where can we add impact of values? How can we support these elements? We need to be more and more aware of this. So this brings us off to the second structure. This is where this is what I bring with me from coffee into natural states. A new natural sustainable state of the city and a new natural and sustainable state of coffee. It is kind of interlinked. So it's really interesting. And then we have to look a little bit behind. After 10 years in just coffee, Fuglen, Stockfleths, all other places, I started expanding into testing these direct trade principles and transparency trade with other industries. For instance, the furniture industry of Norway, vintage furniture industry of Norway. We now built Norwegian Icons, which was a concept where we took the notion of understanding the storytelling value and the historic value around a coffee farm. Could we implement that into a small producer of high quality, sustainably developed furniture, small scale producers in local communities of the Norwegian fjords? And yeah, it worked. So a lot of elements happen. And in 2015, I was given a choice. I was asked by the municipality of Norway, of Oslo, to make the Oslo region brand management strategy, because I've been working so much with the Norwegian brand in association with the Norwegian government, with Norwegian Icons. They said, well, can you do some of the branding for Oslo as well? So I was asked to do a project an involvement process where I was going to take kind of the understanding of the global market structures and value chains and the branding value of Stockfleths and Fuglen. And brand is just identity, right? Identity in market and society for us humans. So value of identity development. And this is the identity of Oslo, because they saw that Oslo had a strong identity as a coffee city of the world. And they wanted to kind of get that into the strategic work. So for 1 year, I worked full time. And this is where I kind of started breaking a bit loose with Oslo as a place, working with place branding and place economy and place understanding. And we made a value filter based on what you experience of Oslo is what you kind of experience there. Fuglen, for instance, is an experience in Oslo, or now also Tokyo. So it's really about understanding the dynamics and the activity of the city, and then understanding it's the values and experience of what you experience. So connecting kind of the coffee and the streetscape into the actual holistic branding of a full city became quite interesting, and you really got the full overview and oversight on this. So this is where you have thoughtful value development with natural state. I formulated the strategy around this, and it's about understanding the natural value, the human value, and the societal value in the market and the value chains of the market in a holistic market sphere. So this is about approaching it with a kind of understanding of Nordic societal market culture and the Japanese nature perspective in the Shinto-based market culture, together with the global market structure as we all are part of. And it's really about approach. It's about understanding, it's about the principles of value creation, and it's understanding the dynamics on the value chains. So this is where we work with this structure. Thoughtful development by natural states. This was supposed to be in English, but I added the Norwegian slide, but that's fine. It's really about understanding the connectivity between natural resource, human resource, and the societal resource in a holistic market sphere. This is where we kind of move ahead. So this is my understanding, and I always start with the reference of Fuglen Coffee Roasters, Norwegian Icons, and Stockfleths. It is bound with me how we can kind of really connect this into everything, because it's deep value chain understanding. And it's really interesting, and it's transparent, and specialty coffee has led the way. It really has made a new way of understanding the market on. And this is applicable for everything. So everything we do, if it's retrade projects, Oslo brand strategy, if it's a communal city development project or a social scape place, and here you see the roastery in context, it really doesn't matter. You can apply this on everything. So we use with sustainability, city-centered development, in Bergen, Trondheim, Asker, all over Norway, we've been now applying this. And we've been working with kind of all kinds of structure where we've been implementing the understanding of the experience in the city with kind of the value chain knowledge of coffee and transparency trade and direct trade. And we've been adding this into all factors. And this is where we start. A few years ago, I started understanding these descriptions, these different economic languages, because I've been working with Japanese economic language and the economic or market culture in Japan for several years. I've been working with the Nordic. I've been working with different aspects of global with the coffee value chain. I've been working with the US. And then I also saw that there was kind of different other languages. It's about circular economy, sharing economy, all of these factors. So I really went into understanding all the different explanations that they do. And that is different economic languages that describe different valuations. So I started working into circularity and a lot of elements. So we've been working as advisors to understand the broader scope of sustainability. And this is where you start implementing these things. So this is an example. This is, for instance, Mesh. This is one of the co-working spaces of Oslo that was founded in 2016, where you really started looking at sharing in the city, right? Sharing economy was just as important as fair trade, direct trade economy, and the whole kind of ethical work trade economy that we developed. And then you had sharing economy, you had all kinds of understandings of sharing resources. And circular economy is also another step in this direction. So there's tons of projects where we just really started working with understanding place and the potentials. And everything goes back to the meeting places and the coffee bars, because you really need to have them in the intersection of all these strategies. And it was really interesting to see this and research into what is the new trade, what is the new value development structures based on these new economic structures. So, and how do you interact these with, for instance, place and place economy? So this is tons of structures and references, which I've been working on the last 10 years. We've been approaching sustainable development. And we also been looking at all different economic understandings. So this is the Hive economy launched in 2019 by Harvard, where you really understand that the connectivity and the complexity of the market is about value and value description. And circular economy is one of the core ones. They could explain natural resource in the market in a good way and sustainable way. And it's really about collaboration abilities, replacing competition forces as a driver. So all these factors comes into the different structures. And one of the projects we're working on now is to actually re-understand the Nordics in a transparent, sustainable-oriented market, where we work as strategists with Nordic innovation to formulate a new Nordic market standard, where you really work on all factors of the vertical value chains and the horizontal market sectors, where you enable the value chains. So now everybody, the whole economy, World Economic Forum, World Business Council, they all are kind of acknowledging the same thing that we did in 2001, 2002, or 2003. We, as the Specialty Coffee Association and in the specialty coffee industry, it's all about the value chains. So now everybody's starting to try to understand the value chains and explain the economy in the value chain perspective. And this really shakes everything. And it's really interesting to see how this formulates new economies. And then, of course, it's about place. It's about understanding the place of where these are happenings and the different market cultures. So we've defined a market sphere as something that is a value chain and value chain enablers in a vertical and horizontal factors, the verticals and the horizontals of the market, in addition to understand the context, where is this? How is it connected to other places? And that is culture and historical and natural context. And this is the regulatory, this is the governments, this is the social aspect of the market. And you really can explain it in these three factors. And that's when it becomes how these kind of structures create these elements. And this is the biggest project we're working on now. Collaboration is key to sustainability. It's quite simple. And it's about understanding the coherencies of all the value chains in the market. So this is massive. And then down to where we were and back to Fuglen. So this is our street where I live. And this is also where we've built the roastery. And the roastery is a part of a bigger project where we managed to buy a lot of old factories that was barren and car washes. And we've used the force of Fuglen, or the coffee bar and the roastery, and the cityscape production and the attractivity to now build and rebuild a whole closed part of the city. And we're building a working community-based and local. And one of the really essences of what we understood after COVID was exactly how important the local communities are. And it's again back to local society to local society. We didn't close our shop, we just made it into a deli shop. And we had a line of people all the way up the street. This is on the right side, the building there, the big, beautiful building, is a closed down old people's home. So it's empty, it's vacant still. And these other factors were just car washes and parking lots. And with the force of a coffee bar and kind of the approach of understanding, we've managed to build this community around it. And this also really shows the connectivity of these structures. So the sum of when I advise on city development and sustainable city development from the perspective of a coffee bar, it is really to understand that what is the feel of a city? The feel of city life. And we represent that in our coffee bars. As baristas, we meet all the people. What is the identity of a city? The identity of its city life. And what is the true value of a city? The sum of its city life. So it's really the most valuable thing you have. And people are understanding that. And content is key. So a smart approach to sustainable city life, find the meaningful value chains and value systems in the sustainable and dense urban economics. And content is key. And this is where we are. We are content. Specialty coffee is content, and understanding that. So content is key to city life. Content equals coffee. Human activity is attractivity, and we need to be working with understanding our position in that and taking the value of it, out of that. But what is valuable and meaningful in the future, and what is quality of life and has value in the future? And this is where we really need to understand it. So we're going to have one more bridge before we go into the Coffee Association strategy that we did this summer, not this winter. But this is the manifest of Natural State. This is the manifest of the new company that I now have, which is quite simply, it's about understanding the new natural state of the market, where people have become aware. So I wrote this in 2017 at the origin when I kind of started this as my new project, and it just really sums up all the learnings from working with ethical, sustainable coffee trade for then 17 years or 16 years, and also being able and allowed to see this in the context of both Japan, city development, societal development, the Nordics, the US, and see this. And when you're at the street level, you really understand how things move. And when you are kind of meeting people in the coffee shops in Oslo or Tokyo or where you travel, that is where you pick up what is happening. And I could boldly state that within a few years, sustainability over time will replace growth as the market driver in the world. It will be the most important aspect of any sustainable value development, is that it's sustainable. It's not just growth. And that is a massive change. And then collaboration ability is replacing competition forces driver. Both of these factors is taken out from the specialty coffee understanding. And the world is changing with the increase in the awareness of sustainability. Awareness is key. This is what drives this naturally. It is really awareness that is now changing everything. And awareness is knowledge and understanding of coherencies in the value chains. And it's completely natural when you look back in the last 100 years. It's been globalized. Our world has been globalized. It's been urbanized. We live denser. But the really change maker is, of course, the digitalization. Digitally enabled transparency. The exact same thing as we disrupted the coffee industry with in the 2000s. It was internet. It was just 7 years old. I think it was 94. It became kind of publicly accessible. 2001, 2002, 2003 was really disruptive years of coffee industry because of digital enabled transparency. And this is all over the world now. And you see that. So transparency is key to sustainability. And it's really important to understand that the direct trade work that's been done, the Cup of Excellence programs, the way you've been working with the transparency as a role model in the coffee industry and specialty coffee, it's really educational on the rest of the world, on the rest of the market. And this is what kind of really makes me proud to come from this factor. I've never been educated. I just learned working practically with coffee. And I think that's something that is really strong with the Specialty Coffee Association, is this potential. Awareness in pictures, awareness of sustainability. Well, we of course have the awareness of the climate effect. It really pushes us. The COVID-19 disrupted the world. The inequality understanding and what's happened with the election and everything after has really driven awareness in a good way. We are more aware, and it's happening around us every time. And awareness of sustainability and sustainable economies, this is the interesting factor, because when people become aware and want to explain things, you start trying to put things in numbers. So in 2013, when we were approaching Japan, the Nordic model as a new economic supermodel was, or the next supermodel was presented as the Economist. Now it's old. Now we are really understanding the natural kind of how fragile the nature is, and nature becomes the new economic supermodel. This is what we are coming into the next 10 years, and coffee is a natural product, which is very fragile. And of course, words of unity with clarity, the new economic languages. So just before we jump into it, it is drivers of the market and society 2020-2030. It is awareness about coherencies and sustainability. It is collaboration abilities replacing competition force as a market driver. It's globalization in local context and local understanding in global contexts. It is digital disruption and physical flexibility. It is digitally enabled transparency and understanding of connectivities. It is urban value in rural context and evaluation of urban nature in city societies. And it's human resource and the full human valuation. And nature becomes valuable again. And this is where it really connects us with coffee again. And the regenerative and natural state of nature becomes the new economic supermodel. New value perspectives makes us formulate new economics to describe sustainable value development continuously. The new economic languages of sustainability. And how do they look? Well, they are here. We've been working with them for a long time. We all represent direct trade. We all represent digital economy. We all represent transparency trade, as Jen was introducing this very in the very beginning. And we are getting more and more about the carbon economy, the eco and the bioeconomy, the sharing economy, circular economy, which I mentioned, SDG economies as well. They're trying to now to implement SDGs into KPIs, and it's all about rethink economics. And one of the most interesting parts about working with Japan is that it's degrowth economy. The BNP is or the GDP has been in decline for 30 years, but they still have the most quality oriented. So it's about not quantity, but it's about quality of life. And then the urban economics. And this gets up. This was just 2 years ago, and now you have the goodwill economy, regenerative economies, culture economy, bioeconomy. Re-understanding the local economy has become so important after COVID, and really understanding how you need to have strong, resilient local societies. And you need to communicate between them. And of course, the Hive Economy project, which was kind of really showing the complexity of it all. So this is where we are. We're escaping with this. You have all kinds of different economic understandings that describe these economic, new sustainable economies. And it's a plural. So what we are working with is to create some core values and define some clarity where we really just reorient towards ourselves with nature, human society, and market. These are the four spheres. And the market connects the three value spheres, defining the core value spheres of the market, making it to a market sphere, and defining augmented value chains the transparent value systems between holistic value spheres as a neutral market structure. So the market is neutral. It's all about principle. It's all about how we approach value creation. If it's for instance, a solidaric value chain will be a value chain as an indirect trade where you only take out income if you create value. And this is, again, principles from direct trade from 20 years ago with specialty coffee. So again, it was the forefront. This is what we can now educate everybody else on. So it's really about understanding the complexity and what this is. So this is market sphere, it's city life, it's identity, it's brand, it's place, concept, or company. You can apply this to everything, and this is what we work with. So within these different value spheres, it's about understanding what is what and what values to count. So how important is the societal value sphere? That is innovation value, collaboration value, learning value. And the learning value of working in a coffee bar cannot be kind of evaluated in any monetary wise. This is tangible. So you can't count it. You need to just talk about it. And then, of course, the natural value sphere, it's circular value, environmental value, which is so important. And then, of course, the contextual value of where things are. But what we work with and what we represent is the most important. Humans are the market, and how we feel about things, is also based on how we identify them. And we always say that the most important value for an individual, for one single human being, is one's identity, is one's self-feel, always. And how you feel and how you are yourself is how you identify your surroundings. So the identity value gives relations value, and that gives emotional value. And if you look at completely natural disconnected markets like the financial market, the only value that actually drives the financial market for future value creation is trust. It's an emotion. It's a very fragile one. So this is really interesting to see how this is loosely connected, and it's all about what you evaluate. So value in market spheres, the bridge between value chains and revenue streams. This is where we come to the conclusion kind of how important this is. Identify your market and value spheres and augmented value chains, and define the income and cost streams as revenue and capital flows in classic economic format after. So this is value-oriented business development or market development. It's purpose-driven value structures. Because of these dynamics is changing, so we kind of foresighted this into the structure. And this is what we explained when we were delivering the strategy to the Norwegian Coffee Association this winter. It's about understanding dynamics of value transfer between society and market, between the local and global, between the urban and rural, again with the digital and physical. And it's understanding the kind of the change from quantity to quality, short-term to long-term, and meaningless growth, sustainable development. There's two very different approaches to this, because everybody is to develop values, but you don't need to grow without meaning. It's about understanding that you create quality instead of quantity and these factors. And this is also what we've done with Fuglen. And it's really about reconnecting humans and nature through the market and societal systems again. So values and qualities of the future is really quality and flexibility, relevance and meaning, and long-term sustainability. And for us, running coffee shops as well, accessibility, and most important, a sense of belonging. This is really what places are to give us as a structure. And this comes again back to the coffee bars. So this is really important to understand. And this was the basics, and this is the natural state perspective of how we advise companies and organizations and municipalities and city developers. And this is what we brought into kind of to make it a full circle this winter with NKI, eller Norsk Kaffeinformasjon, or Norwegian Coffee Association, where I was asked to support and advise in a sustainability strategy for the whole coffee industry. And we deliver this as a holistic sustainability strategy for the Norwegian coffee industry in what is potential within the new economies. And we're back to this picture. And I was given that assignment because I come from coffee. I grew up in coffee, and my perspective is from the street perspective of a coffee bar and the value chain of a coffee retailer. And this is where we looked at this. And we went really into understanding the dynamics of this and really analyzing the impact of all structure. We were working together with one of the big governmental institutions, Utviklingsfondet, which is working on farm sites and how kind of they are interpreting the SDGs into the food production. And they are identifying now the small farmers as the key to securing the equatorial forest scape, working together with these factors, for instance. And in this notion, I also worked with a very interesting startup that was also working with awareness of trees in coffee farms, Leaf Up. So they tried to start this awareness campaign, working with exactly how can you save the biotopes of the coffee farms. This is super crucial with climate effect and understanding the real impact of how we do it. And we need to collectively understand that if we don't do anything about the trees, and remember, in Japan, trees are holy. It's a part of their Shinto culture. And also, and I'm very kind of concerned about the trees and the coffee tree as well. This is pictures from the original last wild coffee biotop in Ethiopia. And it's really about taking care of what we care about, because it is nature that coffee comes from. So it's really about understanding the natural connectivity between humans and humans in local society, on the producing side, local and regional, global, and then it's local society on the consuming side, and their connectivity to nature, the humans and nature, in a global and local context. So this is how we identified all the links from producer, processing, trading, the coffee production, coffee roasting, coffee trade, coffee consume, and coffee waste. And how can we bring things back to nature alongside the value chain? And how can we secure societal and human valuation in each link? And how can we, of course, work with transparency and direct trade in this structure? And what sustainable economies are applicable to this? It's bioeconomy, it's carbon economy, it's sharing economy, circular economy, local economy, direct trade, digital economy, transparency trade. All of them apply because the value chain of coffee is so complex. And that is why it's also so educational. And again, it comes back to understanding the mathematics and economies of this. And but it doesn't matter unless you're back to understanding that it's about these people and this natural understanding and context with these people and in this natural context of their local communities. And this is why it's so rewarding to work with this from this element. So sustainability, it's all about understanding the value chains of coffee, for instance, which value systems they form and what value it is meaningful to count. And that is where we are. It is about the human values, the natural values, and the societal values as a part of the market values. And that is where we work based on and hope for a new natural and sustainable state of the city and a new natural and sustainable state of coffee, with both the learnings and insights and perspectives from Fuglen and natural state. And I think that was it, Jen. 10 minutes left for talking and conversation.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I have so many questions, and I've just gotten a note that we're allowed to run a little bit over by 5 minutes. So I'm going to give us 15 minutes, and I'm not even sure where we want to start. Just 1 second. Perfect. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that it was just the two of us on screen.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have known about Fuglen for a while, and I have always associated with that beautiful design ethos. It makes furniture buying in my household very difficult. But I didn't really appreciate the really robust framework underlying that, using that as a tool to sort of draw people in and to educate, and as another pillar of the business. And so I have so much appreciation for that and just understanding that better. But then as I literally could not write fast enough, because you've articulated so many things that I think we're all thinking about and talking about, and brought them together in a single place, and made it, all of a sudden I had words to use in places where I didn't before. So thank you too for that. The first question I want to start with is, you mentioned that you wanted to find ways to articulate value beyond sort of costs or income when you're thinking about that balance sheet. I'm wondering, I feel like you've probably found a way to do it, but do you quantitatively address that? Have you found ways to pull that into things, or is that just something that you identify and work with and understand as a business that maybe that's not going to show up on a balance sheet somewhere?
Exactly, it's the last. You have to qualify it and talk about it as something that is present, because it is non-tangible. It's not countable yet. But it doesn't mean that you should not talk about it, because when you don't talk about it, you lose it completely. So it's about identifying the values at a greater extent first. So we talked about actually a less accurate but more poetic and meaningful economic language, because sometimes it's too accurate. If you look at all the kind of value that is created in a meeting in a coffee bar about learning value, societal value, anything that happens there, transactions of kind of heat and air, there's so many transactions in the sphere of a coffee bar, but the only economical, traceable transaction is those few dollars over the counter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you really need to kind of observe and understand the augmented value perspective. And you need to kind of really define and agree and talk about what values are important to speak about in this business modeling. And then what is interesting when you do that, and if you force yourself to look at how does it impact natural value, societal value, and human value, at the same time as you're, of course, addressing the market value, we always find that we get more value streams, no income streams, revenue streams. We find more of them. We find more identifiable, actually countable money flows. So we are kind of advising companies to be more resilient, because you can have a small income stream here, you can have a small income stream here. The whole factor of Fuglen was the synergetic structure of nighttime, daytime, and lifestyle, which you addressed, and pulling each other in, right? And this is where we kind of saw, where I learned how you can actually apply this on everything. And it's all about your approach to value creation. So it's really important to identify them and start talking about them, and then you will see that more and more countables will appear on your Excel sheet.
Brilliant. And then, so I've got a stack of questions here from the audience, and so I'm going to try and maybe smush a couple of them together so that we have time to address them. This first question is, what were the difficulties you faced in opening a shop in a culture foreign to you? What adaptations did you make? How did you decide what to keep from your native culture and what to take from the adoptive culture? And I'd like to tack on another question to that, which is that you mentioned these different economic languages. And I am very mindful of the fact that there are quite a few, you guys have broken boundaries in so many ways. You were doing things that now I think many retail companies are looking to do, which is break into new markets. And so on top of that, sort of what of that economic language did you need to learn? And how do you learn to speak that new language and evaluate maybe new potential locations or cultures to work with? Sorry, it's a big, long one.
Yeah, that's two big questions, but
yeah.
It's the first thing you need to understand is that there is massive differences within each nation, which is in each historic context. If it's the EU, it's the Nordics, or if it's Norway or Denmark or Sweden, or if it's us in the US, Canada, Ethiopia, Kenya, the market cultures are a result of historic societal development. And it's really interesting to see that there is a plurality. So you need to understand that there is tons of economic understandings. And that's kind of the first beauty to understand. And it's really about identifying the impact of the value chains in the context of where they are, and understand the most important market culture aspects of where you approach, like Japan. It's quality. Mm-hmm. It's integrity. It's kind of long-term perspectives. The most interesting part about Japan is the time perspective, the value of time. That is, we really have short time to save ourselves and our coffee industry and our beloved coffee trees around the world. Time is of the essence, and the time perspective. But it's two ways. It's the short-term activity and it's the long-term perspective. And Japan market culture has a very long-term perspective. It's like 1,000-year perspective. And that was really interesting to learn. And then, of course, Japan has a lot of other elements, but it's the quality, it's the long-term perspective, and it's the connection to nature. Japan is a Shinto-based market culture. It's a natural religion. It's the only natural religion or fully industrialized society in the world that's based on a natural religion. So that's quite interesting because it gives human a part of nature. While in the Nordic countries, we have the humans as a part of society, right? The collectiveness. It's quite similar as well. So it's really about understanding that we're part of something bigger than ourselves, and we're part of a system, and we belong to these factors. So that is the core essence of what I brought with me from the Japanese perspective and the long-term perspectives of nature. What we brought with us was work-life balance, time again. How do you share the time of your day? We had the 5-day week, the 8-hour work days. We applied the Norwegian or the Nordic labor law, which is kind of very balanced with you're not allowed to work more than 8 hours. You're supposed to have 8 hours sleep in your 8 hours own time. All of these strange social democratic factors from the Nordic society, and of course the gender equalification, flat structures, all of these factors. So bringing these with us was quite interesting. And this is also why I'm really looking forward to the day that we can open a shop in the US as well, to kind of really just indulge and impose in the US market culture, which is very oriented towards the creative force of the individual, the human kind of really potential, and it's a lot of great elements. So we're kind of just really being in the very amazing role of being able to look at different qualities of different market cultures and try to pick the best ones, apply them to our business modeling.
I think that's, I mean, it makes sense. I would imagine it's quite difficult to, I mean, clearly you want to go for the best fits, but also there's a lot to consider and how they balance with each other. Have you ever found a situation where, you know, one aspect of a market culture has really resonated with you, but actually directly conflicts with one from a different one?
Yes, there's been a lot of lost in translations episodes. It's been quite intense several times, and we've there's a reason we had to kind of spend 10 years in Japan to really make it fly. I think things takes time, but you know, at the same time as we have little time, we also need to acknowledge that things take time, and that's why we all need to work collectively fast together to make things move faster. But it's really there's tons of situations, so we need to have another meeting on that.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to switch gears for a second. We have a question here that is about vertical sustainability. How do you decide which coffee sources to work with long term, and how do you navigate the difficulties of importing through direct trade, with especially countries that do not have trade agreements with the country in which you operate?
Oh, that's a very sophisticated question as well. We work as direct as we can. That's a principle. So you need to work within the context of where you are. If it's Ethiopia or Kenya, it's quite different. Colombia or Brazil, it's again, market cultures are very often found in the regulatory structures of the market, right? Of the governance and the laws. So it's really about trying to how we work. We work trust-based and we work in dialogue. It's Bjørnar that really works with the coffee trading itself and Fuglen. And we had Joachim before, and we've been working before we started working ourselves with Kenji, Bjørnar working as buyers. We also worked with kind of the people that we know and trust, Nordic Approach, Coffee Collaborative. So we work in association with. Again, we try to collaborate in the value chain. We try to really reach the direct as possible, and kind of establish trustworthy long-term relationships through the market systems. But it's really about presence and being able to keep the dialogue going and have the conversations, you know, and really get that into a good way.
All about the collaboration and the human connection.
Yeah, it's really all about the collaboration and the human connection.
Just, I think on a more final note, thinking about if somebody wanted to, I mean, there were a lot of economies discussed. There was a lot to sort of dig in there, and I know that I certainly wanted to sort of like just see some of these slides a little bit more and kind of dig into them a bit. So it might feel a little bit overwhelming for a retail business at the moment to sort of go, okay, but how can I apply this to my business? Do you have any advice in terms of what a business owner should be doing if they wanted to start digging into this a little bit more and thinking about the kinds of values that they can create or add, or these different streams, or just start thinking about these different economies through the lens of their own business? Any advice? Yeah.
It's really just to start opening up and start asking questions and start kind of really investigating your own value chains. Understanding not only coffee, but anything. You just ask where things come from. Is it transparent? Transparency just reveals everything, doesn't it? So that's the form. So really just starting to ask questions, ask for how things are connecting, and how can you shorten them? How can you work with a bigger side on your side? How can you strengthen your business by working in the sustainable approach? And really finding the economic opportunities in the sustainable economy is the best way, because you can really increase the quality and the value of your business if you understand the new values of our time, which is the sustainable-based ones.
Well, Einar, it has been such a pleasure, and I wish we had so much more time. I feel like I have so many more questions, but thank you so much for this presentation. Truly, it was just so great to have all of these things brought together and to understand sort of where all of these came from and to hear more about your journey. So I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
thank you so much for having me and inviting me. I'm very honored and I'm very happy to be here with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.